All right. Good evening, everyone. Happy Tuesday, January 28th, 2025. The Baker Fairburn Hockey Show is live following the Sabres 7-2 triumph over the Boston Bruins at KeyBank Center. Thanks, everyone, for hopping in here again on virtually no notice. I am your co-host, Kris Baker. You can find me on X at Sabres Prospects. Without the hat tonight, on the right-hand side of your screen, if you're watching this on YouTube, that is your Sabres writer for The Athletic. That is Matthew Fairburn. You can find all of Matthew's work, including probably something in the morning, if not late tonight, on the heels of the big victory that the Sabres had here as they open their post-Bills schedule. Again, a 7-2 victory over the Bruins. You can find all of Matthew's work at theathletic.com/Sabres. On your way in, if you're watching on YouTube, hit the like button on this video. First of all, as Matthew pointed out previously on an episode here of the Baker Fairburn Hockey Show, I get very angry when we don't get the requisite amount of likes. I want 100 tonight. If we can do that, that'd be greatly appreciated. You can subscribe to this channel. You can find the Baker Fairburn Hockey Show on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. You can please leave a 5-star review. All right. Matthew, Boston scores first tonight. And then it was all Sabres from there. Tage Thompson and JJ Pettersson get hat tricks. Zach Benson gets the full Blake Bortles treatment tonight with a garbage time goal, a power play goal. Sabres go 1 for 3 on the power play tonight. UPL stops 25 of 27. He gives up 1 at even strength and 1 on the PP. So I'll just throw it to you. We have a couple things to get to tonight, but we might as well just talk about this game because it's very rare that you and I go live following a Sabres victory. It seems like you and I get together a lot and we're talking about a loss and we're like, oh, you know, what's going on with this team, blah, blah, blah. It's always something new. I was texting you tonight. I was like, 5 minutes left in the game. I think they were up like 5-2, 6-2 at that point. And I was like, they can still blow it, because that's just kind of how we're trained these days. But my biggest takeaway tonight, before I pass it over to you, was we've seen so many times this season, Sabres score a goal and then they have a lapse and they give one up. Tonight, they were the team to strike quick. Thompson gets that 102.3 mile an hour slap shot less than a minute after the Bruins score their first goal. And then later in the game, the Bruins get their second goal. And again, less than a minute, Pettersson highlight reel. So kind of flip the script a little bit. I thought nice win, nice team victory. I think that they build on some of the good things that they did in the last game out west. But Matthew, game thoughts tonight. We saw some different configurations. Maybe I'll lead you in with that.
Yeah, that's where I was going to go, actually, because, when you're sitting here, game 50 for the Sabres, they're, they are where they are in the standings. The season has gone, the way it has gone. But what you're looking for, at least what I'm looking for, covering these games and trying to analyze this team, is what can you extract from each game that maybe is relevant to the big picture. And the line configurations that they keep playing around with are part of that for me, because you have Kulich, Pettersson, and Thompson looking really strong as a line. Now, one game does not a line make, but 2 hat tricks from one line is certainly a nice little bump. And we've already talked about Yuri Kulich and the step he's taken. Clearly, he's unlocking a little bit of something in that line. Lindy Ruff was saying after the game that Tage Thompson, he hasn't even asked him, if he's still battling through whatever he's battling through, because he likes him, on the wing. And he does take the occasional face-off, but he likes him on the wing because he's up ice quicker, right? He's not the last guy in the zone coming out of the defensive zone. As a center, he doesn't have those responsibilities, and he likes what it's done for his offensive game. Thompson seems open to whatever. He said, when I asked him, he said the biggest thing he's tried to do is just be adaptable to whoever he wants to play with, whatever position they want him to play. And that's what we've talked a lot about, Thompson's leadership. And I think that's, kind of another example of it, just putting the ego aside, not really caring whether you're playing center or wing, making it work. And, you pointed out before we pressed live, but that second line had kind of an understated night, right? With Cousins, Zucker, and and Tuck kind of I think that's a nice setup for Cousins, right? To have two of those hardworking two-way players on either side of them. So maybe they have a little bit of something, that you're looking for anything that they can start to build on. And, I don't think you're going to cement anything for next season. I don't think you're going to lock in your top six or anything like that, because there are pieces missing. There are contract things that need to be sorted out. There are trades that should probably be made. One, potential target that we'll discuss tonight, but you get a game like that and you see another step from that top line. And I think you're at least feeling good about the individuals, right? Tage Thompson is looking a lot like the guy that they had a couple of years ago. Pettersson finding some confidence, and they might be developing another top line player in between them right there. So that's I get where they are, right? We've dug into that plenty, but beating Boston 7-2. Anybody who was here tonight, that's what they paid for, right?
No, you mentioned Kulik in the middle as kind of this emerging presence. So we spent a lot of time talking about him on the last episode just a few days ago. If you haven't checked that out, I'd encourage you to go back and do so. We probably spent a good 30, 35 minutes probably talking about the Kulik scenario and just kind of early thoughts on his game and how he's emerged. Tonight, a lot of plays off the puck, individual battles. Marty Baron did a really good job highlighting on the game broadcast him taking a hit to make a play high in the zone, sweep the puck out of the zone. Thompson scoops it up, and it's a good shot attempt on one of the plays that he didn't score on. There were other plays earlier in the game with Kulik where he gets leverage on guys and leans on guys, and it's simple plays where he can he's so grounded in the ice, and he's got pretty good upper body strength that he can just lean on guys, press them up against the boards, and win a battle that way. Whether it's him winning the battle, winning the puck himself, or canceling out a check in the defensive zone and allowing someone else to come in and scoop the puck. Those are little plays that are huge in the grand scheme of things in terms of, just getting the puck out of your zone or, allowing the transition game to start. He's really, I want to point those out. And I said this last time we talked about Kulik because so much was about him shooting and his scoring and everything else. And what we heard about him in Rochester was, he's not ready. He needs to get better and all this other stuff. He's doing everything he needs to do right now to stay in that position that he's at and to stay and to keep Thompson on the wing. On Cousins, the one thing, before we go to that line, they did that line though, the Kulik, Pettersson, Thompson line, 5-on-5. They got outchanced, basically every metric, like at 5-on-5, Corsi numbers were in Boston's favor when they were on the ice. I don't see the scoring chances in front of me because I got the stupid thing in front of me, but I'm pretty sure the scoring chances, if I look, the expected goals, share, everything was in favor of Boston. Sorry, I had to go and look around my laptop. But the Zucker Cousins tuck line, to your point, I thought that they looked really good. Didn't get the benefit of the results on the score sheet, but they did their jobs tonight. And this goes back to something that you've been saying for a while this year when we're talking about solving that Rubik's Cube that is Dylan Cousins' season. Get him with some veteran guys. And magically, the unit that he's centering is more effective overall. We saw that tonight. I want to say that Cousins and Tuck led the way. I think Cousins, in terms of the forwards, led the team in ice time. Tuck led the team in ice time. Cousins, I think, was right behind him, and they earned it. The funny thing, too, in terms of a stat of the night, was that Thompson and Pettersson both had 4 points. +6, both those guys, +6. Thompson did it in 15:43 time on ice. It's pretty good. And now he has 25 goals in 50 games. Pretty good number. So, and it's worth pointing out, by the way, the answer is like, how did they win this game? It wasn't really dumb luck, when they got maybe out possessioned, if that's a word, and out shot attempted a lot of times in this game. Boston, you could just tell from an eye test, they were sorely missing some of those defensemen, McAvoy, Lindholm. They were without Carlo tonight. That did matter. How about, was that Tuck that went between Zadorov's legs on one of those goals? I think it was Tuck.
Yes, I think so.
Hell of a play. Hell of a play. But anyways, good team win overall. It's amazing looking at the standings with this team and where they are. You know, they're still so far out of it. And their goal differential is, I think, still, 15 under. But, man, you know, if you could see more of this that we saw for the team tonight, maybe there's signs of hope down the stretch and getting things right. You know, I don't think they're going to make a push, but just getting things right mentally going into the offseason, setting it up from there. So other line configurations. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
It is absolutely, too little too late, right?
Yeah.
In a sense, unless there's some historic run in their back pocket, which they haven't won more than 3 games all season. So we know that's probably not there. But you do still need, to develop. I don't want to sit here and pretend that, like, if they go on a strong run to end the season, that it's going to really build up hope or set the table. We know finishing strong one season doesn't guarantee anything the following October, but you do need a combination of things to happen with individuals building confidence and just from an evaluation standpoint, figuring out exactly what you have. And now the pressure's off. So the calculus is a little bit different in terms of, oh, these guys are performing with no pressure. But I do also like to see who are the guys that perform, who are the guys that don't mail it in, right? Because the standings are toast. Who are the guys that are trying to drag the team into it every night and set a little bit of a standard rather than, simply folding and, playing for draft position or anything like that. It's not that the players are doing that, but, from a team standpoint, there is some value when you're a team that has lost for so long in trying to find a way to string together something, even though I know it's not going to sell any sort of hope, nor should it, for the future. But if Tage Thompson can rip off a strong end of the season, and Peterka, if Kulik emerges as a true top line player, these are things that are pieces to your puzzle going into the offseason that matter, especially as we talk about some of the potential moves that they could make as soon as whenever, right? I mean, this Elias Pettersson thing is hot right now. Like, it's every word that comes out of Vancouver, that situation gets more and more pressing, it seems like. So who knows how quickly, there could be changes around here, but you need to know a little bit of what you have, and it doesn't hurt when some of the guys on your roster start boosting their trade value a little bit.
Yeah, I guess we can go back and talk about Pettersson, because I think you're chomping at the bit to get there. I think it was the Globe and Mail had an interview with Jim Rutherford today. And I have a quote up. There were a couple quotes. It's behind a paywall, so you have to kind of scour Twitter, I think, to pull out the best of. In that, one of the quotes, so we might as well just kind of get into it, because I think it's, like, I know there's people that don't believe that Kevin Adams is going to make that move, or, is willing to maybe part with I don't know. I think there's just this cloud over the organization right now that people just refuse to believe that the Sabres will be a player. But there's a couple things, and we'll get to that quote in a second. If you go back, Elliot Friedman had mentioned over the weekend in whatever was it, Hockey Night in Canada? I don't even know. He went out of his way to mention that the Sabres, he believes, are very much in it. I don't know if he called him a front runner. I can't remember.
He did not call them that. The little graphic said, are the Sabres a front runner? ? But he did not use those words. He just said he believes they're in on it. They're interested in Pettersson. And he, going back a little while on his podcast, had theorized, he didn't hard and fast report it, but he, theorized that, what about a Pettersson for Cousins and Byram? What do you think? What do we think of that type of thing? So he's been on the trail of this for a little bit while. And to your point, Rutherford's comments today, I think those, in combination with the fact that, the Rantanen deal happened with Carolina, and it wasn't Pettersson. It sounded like Pettersson was also a target of theirs. And JT Miller has not moved yet. But Jim Rutherford today basically said the situation is not tenable.
That's the quote. I think I want to get into the quote because I have it up here. Why this becomes a little more real. It was fun to talk about it a couple weeks ago when we didn't really know the truth, right? Pettersson was up in front of the media in Vancouver and JT Miller, and they were both kind of saying, no, it's not really a thing. Going back to that interview that was in the Globe and Mail today, Jim Rutherford, quote, I felt like for a long time that there was a solution here because everyone has worked on it, including the parties involved, the parties being JT Miller and Elias Pettersson. But it only gets resolved for a short period of time and then it festers again. And so it certainly appears like there's not a good solution that would keep this group together. That's like, hey man, I'm open for business. You know? So now it becomes more real. You look at the Elliot Friedman note that he made over the weekend. Then you have this quote to follow it up a couple days later. And here we are again talking about it. I think it's worth talking about because just to reset for those that aren't aware, I think most are now because I'm pretty sure a lot of people are looking into this and talking about it. Elias Pettersson has a big deal. He's in the first year of his extension, but he does not have trade protection in the first year. He gains trade protection on July 1. So you have this window if you're Kevin Adams to put together your best offer. And look, like it's time to pounce on this. If you can get another, do you call it a franchise altering element here?
I would. I mean, he's a 100-point player 2 years ago, 80-plus points last year. He's in the middle of a down year, but how much of that, we talk about this all the time in Buffalo, how much of it is the environment out there in Vancouver right now? If there's something going on with him and JT Miller, whatever the hell is going on in that locker room, I'm not going to pretend to know. I'm not in that locker room, but it's franchise altering when you can get a 100-point player.
It's not like you forgot how to play hockey. You know what I mean?
Nobody on the Sabres has ever had 100 points on the current roster.
On the current roster. Sure.
I mean, that would be franchise altering in that respect to get a top of the lineup player. I know we touched on him a few weeks ago and what he would bring, but the fact that it's becoming more realistic that he'll actually be moved. Now, not necessarily that the Sabres are going to win any sort of sweepstakes, but to your point, which I think is a good one, there's people I'm sure that will say, and we've said it on this show, should Kevin Adams be the one handling the trade deadline, right? If you're not sure about him as your general manager, these are important months. We talked about that going back to December, I think. That if you're sure that he's not the guy, the sooner you act, the better, because there's never a line of demarcation where you stop making moves that could alter your franchise, especially with all the rumors, and all the calls I'm sure they're getting on some of these young players that are theoretically part of their core, or they thought were part of their core. So that's a legitimate, question and concern people have. Should Kevin Adams be the one making this deal? But to your point, time kind of is of the essence here. Carolina almost swooped in and made this deal instead of the one they made with Colorado. Not to mention, like you said, the trade protection kicks in on July 1, start of the new league year, at which point it becomes a lot harder for you to make a deal. But also, the salary cap situation everybody in the league is in right now, I think creates an opportunity for the Sabres. They have space, they have assets, they have young players on their roster, and that's a big number to absorb, right? $11.6 million is not something, you have to get really creative for most teams to make a trade like that. The Sabres could make it pretty easily. By, especially with some of the pieces they would have to move to get him. It would not be that difficult. So you have an opening, if you're aggressive and proactive, to maybe make something happen here and, get the guy in the door and start to see what it looks like. So the idea that Kevin is not the one to make the trade, I don't know. We don't even know if he could continue on past this season. So if it's at the draft, he could be the one doing it then too. We don't really know, where Terry Pegula's at in his thought process there, but it doesn't factor in too much for me just because this player might not be available in 2 weeks, a week,
I think it's time to put together your best offer. There's a couple things. So I think that the probability that they're going to move one, and this is like the no shit moment, right? Thanks, Captain Obvious. But the probability that they're going to move one of the two is pretty high. The probability that they're going to move both Pettersson and JT Miller seems considerably lower. You almost already saw JT Miller moved to the Rangers a little over a week ago. Apparently there was a deal that there was a breakdown at like right in the final mile of the deal, I guess. Look, you saw a team tonight in Boston that could certainly use JT Miller. Okay. You got to beat you got to beat everyone else to the punch to make a deal with the Canucks, in my opinion, honestly.
Yeah, because I think when they trade one, they're good, right? You can,
or at least there's less pressure to make a follow-up deal.
Because
right?
that could solve the problem. I would think if you get rid of one, if those two and whatever their relationship is the problem, then getting rid of one of them should solve it. You may not need to get rid of both. That's not to say they won't if they get the right deal and they really want to alter, the whole structure of their roster. But it's a good point that it's not just the Pettersson deal you're trying to beat teams to. It's JT Miller as well. And you're not going to be in on JT Miller because he already has no trade protection. And can't say for sure, but I would bet good money that he wouldn't be waiving it to come to Buffalo.
Given the pieces that the Sabres likely would have to give up, and most importantly, I think the combined salary, we can kind of speculate, if you go back to that Cousins and Byram idea, which, I'm still kind of going back and forth on, okay, mathematically, it makes sense. The Sabres actually, because you saw Brandon Saad hit waivers today, they in theory could claim Saad and still make a deal with Vancouver. And then they have to navigate some waters for next year because Saad's got term. He's got another year left. Was it 4 and change?
4.5. Yeah.
4.5.
It's a decent number. Cap's going up. They have space. We've got some Saad questions in the in the chat, not to be confused with the sad questions we usually get after Sabres losses, but I would claim Saad. I would. I'm fine with the $4.5 million. I know he's in a down year. I think it's not, this is a guy that plays at the front of the net. He's a veteran. I just like the way he plays. And I think it's the type of player they could use more of. So is it a little bit of a risk to carry that 4.5 next year? It is, but it's a risk I'd be willing to take just considering the makeup of the lineup. And I don't think it blocks you from making a Pettersson deal, to your point.
Where do you put Saad? So he's been playing left wing this year. I guess where Krebs is right now, maybe? I don't know. I mean,
yeah, Peyton Krebs playing left
center, left wing and center, right? I mean, both.
Yeah.
I guess. I mean, you have Greenway coming back.
True.
It gets interesting, right? That's a wrinkle that was unforeseen coming into today. But no, I think back to, we don't need to kind of go too deep on this because I think we've already done that on a previous episode. But in terms of going back, let's go back to Vancouver for a second. And if we think that time is of the essence, and that's kind of the theme that we're working with here, and we're trying to encourage Kevyn Adams to put together his best offer, is it Cousins and Byram right now? Does the emergence of Yuri Kulik make it more palatable to move on from Cousins? I've already stated that I'd like to see it through with Cousins, but I certainly understand if that's the direction that they take.
Cousins and Byram feels like a more painful trade than, say, Power and Quinn, right? I've seen a few people throw Power and Quinn in there, and Quinn's kind of the one I think about as the extra in addition to Power. To me, it feels like Cousins and Byram hurts a little bit more. Why that is, maybe it's Byram and the way he's played and, kind of the leadership he's shown in a tough year and what I think he could become for your team long term.
Great game tonight, especially that first period, by the way.
I just really like the way he's played this year. and you're giving up Cousins like that. That one hurts a little bit. I think I would do it. I think I would, but there might have to be a little something else coming the other way. Where it gets interesting is, would the Canucks consider, some futures instead, and what would that look like? Because the Sabres they have a good prospect pool, but I don't think they have in terms of like the high end. Those guys are all already playing in the NHL, right? They've Benson, Kulik, Power, I guess if he was once upon a time a prospect, right? Like these guys that other Benson,
well, Swedish GM. And that's an organization that has loved their Swedes over the years. And you have a couple in Rochester right now. I mean, it depends on if they're looking for that.
That's
you
true.
got to save some prospects too to go and get Brian Rust. Okay,
that's
so
right.
Save a couple
you got other trades to make. So it's not that their prospects aren't good, but it's just, which one is going to be that we saw over the summer, right? Like Matt Savoy went for Ryan McLeod. So, Pettersson is a different ball game. And, so maybe Hellenius, Wahlberg and Ostlund are good names to bring up.
It would have to be like a Hellenius type for sure, I think, in terms of
it's just got to be your highest
NHL upside,
highest end prospect, unless
and
I don't know if they would go there, but Devin Levi is another name that I suppose would maybe get thrown into the mix as one of your top prospects, right? I mean, he's still down there in the AHL playing really well. They have Demko, so maybe that's not something that, considering how close to the NHL Levi is, but
so
he's another name.
You did this so for those, if you haven't read Matthew's 2-part mailbag, you kind of address this in one of your mailbags, right? And I read it, but I don't remember all of it because I'm old. Did you mention the Sabres 2025 first round draft pick in that article with maybe some protection?
I did mention it. I'm pretty sure. Sometimes I forget exactly how I've mentioned things.
No excuse for you, man. No excuse.
I wrote it.
For me, I got plenty.
I had to write a lot, yesterday. I was over at Bill's locker clean out day, and then I was finishing up that mailbag. But the first round pick, to me, if I'm including that, just give me top 5 protection on it and I feel fine. If there's top 5 protection, I'm okay sending it. And that's Porter Martone protection for me. If it's a top 3 or 5 pick, I want that guy and feel strongly enough about it that I want that protection on there. But outside of that, I'd be okay with it. And maybe it's even top 3 protection. Right?
But it's not those 3 pieces though, right? It's not a Cousins, Byram, and for obviously you're grossly overpaying.
Right.
So who are you saving? Is it like, you know what I mean? Is it one of Cousins and Byram, the pick, and like a prospect, maybe not Hellenius, but maybe a secondary prospect, something like that?
Well, I don't know. Yeah, could it be like Cousins, Wahlberg, and a top 5 protected first round pick?
Yeah, Byram, Ostlund, and a protected pick. I mean, that's still a lot too. But I mean, I don't know, man. It's interesting. Either way, Kevin, figure it out.
Well,
put together your best offer and put a timer on it.
And this is what I wrote, today. I think that published was. There's not a lot of teams that are as positioned as the Sabres to get creative. It's like, okay, you don't like that offer? Let me swap this piece out and do this. Which of this bucket of 4 prospects do you like? Oh, do you need a goalie prospect? I have one of those. Do you need a high first round pick? Well, we got one of those. Or you go with the 2026 pick and, give them that unprotected and, bet on what your team could be next year. And maybe that lessens the NHL ready piece that you need to send. Maybe they like Peyton Krebs. I don't know. I don't think he's going to be a major needle mover in a trade like this, but maybe he sweetens the pot a little bit. I can't imagine they love, maybe Matthias Samuelsson is appealing in some way. I don't know. Like they have so many pieces, young, under contract, young RFAs, young prospects that are still developing and draft picks that there's not really an excuse to not be able to put together a package. I can't tell you exactly what the Canucks would like, but there has to be some combination of things that they would like, unless they're asking for, oh, we need Kulich, or we need Tage Thompson, or Tuck needs to be in this deal.
We know that they liked Jordan Greenway last year.
We do know that. No, that's another good name to throw in because he's on an expiring deal. Now they're not a contender right now. Oh, they're a fringe contender,
They've been
I guess.
teetering, yeah.
But last year they were positioning themselves for a potential cup run and looked, I thought, around this time last year, like they might have the chops to do it because they were getting such good goaltending. Demko got hurt and things kind of went sideways for them. But Greenway is an interesting piece. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they're asking for somebody like Tuck or Thompson. Like if they don't want to go so young, that they're asking for some of these, I don't think you go all the way to Thompson, but Tuck, all of a sudden you start to, depending on the rest of the package, you're like, okay, well, where's this going? I believe Tuck might have some ties to that area. Is his wife from Vancouver? I might be imagining that, but I mean, I don't know too many guys in the league that would be complaining too much about going to Vancouver.
What to truly assess any deal, you got to talk about like what's the possible downfall of pursuing or acquiring Elias Pettersson. I mean, it can't all be.
It's not all
rosy,
upside no brainer. Otherwise, he wouldn't be sitting out there, right? I mean, he hasn't been playing all that great over the last 12 months, and I think the downside is pretty clear in that he has an $11.6 million cap hit. I mean, that is a massive cap hit. And if he does not produce like a 100-point player, that's going to be an anchor and you're going to be tied to that. Now, he's only 26 years old.
26.
So
yeah.
You've got him until he's 32, I think. 7 years left on that deal, or maybe I think 7 years left on that deal.
7 after this, yes. 11.
So he'll be 32,
hit.
33. I mean, that is a good chunk of his prime that you're getting. And if you can get him back to what he was, if he's a little bit happier, I'm not ruling out that the guy would be happy here. I mean, I know we're fixated on the no trade protection and the fact that he doesn't have it. It's a huge bonus because you don't even have to convince him. But playing with Dahlin, I think there is a little something to the opportunity he might have here. And I'm not ruling out the fact that he would welcome that and maybe embrace it and play well. I mean, thinking about him with, I don't know, who do you put him with? I mean, we're getting ahead of ourselves, but that's the fun part of trades like this. I mean, Thompson on his wing, right? Like would be pretty fun.
Be pretty sick. Yeah.
Like,
it gives Kulich some breathing room.
And I mean,
but at the same time, you can balance your lineup a little bit more. Like if you think about, if Tuck's not part of a deal, and I'm not advocating throwing Tuck in this deal, okay? And the assumption that Tuck is here, Tuck's ability to finish off the rush and generate shots off the rush, which has always been a strength in his game, would match very well with a player of Elias Pettersson's type. You could, in theory, not disrupt what you have going right now with Kulich, kind of, not making the mistake that they made with Cousins, keeping him there with at least one veteran. Peterka, I guess you'd call him a veteran at this point. And I would actually bring Benson back up to play opposite Tuck on a line with Pettersson or Zucker, whatever. Or you go Zucker, you're not going to go get Brian Rust this year. But I'm still stuck on Rust, by the way. Zucker, Rust, opposite each other. Find him a centerman. Boom. You're changing things all of a sudden. Shit, go get Trent Frederick. Resign him. Anyways, go ahead. I'm doing like the
Bakes. He's putting together the roster.
Yeah.
He's fixing all the problems. But
let's get one at a time. But yeah, I would think of it that way though. That's my initial lean. To answer your question is, don't disrupt what's going and get a balanced top six. I do it that way.
Yeah. I mean, I think the idea of when they played the Canucks last week, it's like watching when Quinn Hughes and Pettersson are on the ice at the same time. I was just thinking, like, man, imagine Dahlin and Pettersson on the ice at the same time. You know, the creativity, the space they're able to create, the
Gonna see it at the
shot.
Four Nations.
Right. And so if nothing has happened by then, which we're coming up on that tournament pretty quick here.
They're gonna
you
make
know?
me give a shit about that tournament.
Right. You're gonna have to we're gonna have to watch a little bit, and maybe Dahlin can do some light tampering. I mean, we talked before. I mean, getting Dahlin a friend is, it's not the worst thing in the world. So I don't know. I like the idea as, you can't go with the status quo, right? And you have to look at the options that are available to you, and realistic options. To the realistic path to acquiring star level talent, which Pettersson is, there's not a lot of avenues to acquire like ready-made star level talent.
Matt, you're in win now mode.
That's what, if this was win now mode, then what's next year, right? I mean, it's so there's a lot of reasons to take the risk. And I think you've got enough prospect depth and, depth of young talent. They've got a lot of guys in this bucket of like, you're not totally sure exactly what they are. There's potential, but you're not. And yeah, there's going to be risk in a trade like this because you might pick the wrong guy, right? Like you might trade Byram instead of Power. And in 3 years, you're going to wish you traded Power instead.
Can't worry about it.
There's all sorts of that. Same with Cousins. Same with Hellenius versus Wahlberg or whatever. But I guess my point is you have so many of them that, at some point you got to take a risk. They're not all going to play for you anyways, down the road. And so
you can't have the scar tissue from seeing guys leave Buffalo and have success elsewhere. That's always a possibility in any trade that you make. You have to just worry about what makes your team better. What makes you better now and in the future? And I asked you the question about like, what's the potential like downfall, or what's the, where are the traps in this? The trap is if he somehow doesn't find his game, right? And he never lives up to 11.6. He has to do a lot to live up to 11.6 cap hit. Here's why it could work, right? You have your captain as a countryman. I think that does matter. I think you can ease him in. That locker room, if everything that is starting to come out in the media, or at least where there was smoke, there's now fire, right? You're in the locker room with these guys. They have that group, I think, genuinely likes each other. There's always these like on team. I've been on teams as an athlete years ago, right? It's like, there's always one guy on your team. There's always an asshole that you don't like, right? I don't know if is there much of that you see. I don't need you to kind of go too deep.
I mean,
and maybe reach your.
I recognize that there's a lot that happens that we don't see, and there's a lot, that, I think, we don't know everything, right? But
right.
There's genuinely, it's hard to think of anybody that would even come close to that bucket. And, if there has been that at all over the last few years, it's usually like, it's mostly guys that are, on the fringe, upset about a situation, upset about getting sent down, up, stuff like that. But that's not even really, I don't even put that in the same bucket. That's just guys that are frustrated. And a lot of guys are frustrated with what's happened in the last few years.
So here's the question, right? Is because like I love JT Miller. I love his intensity. Is the downfall having too many guys that are laid back or too many guys that like each other? Like, honestly.
I mean, it's possible. I mean, but to your point, Pettersson would come in here to a much different environment. If that is truly what is causing the rift, the intensity of Miller's leadership style, then I think there would be, I think he would, that's why I say I think he would welcome this. Like if he's I don't know exactly how friendly he is with Dahlin, but it seems like they're pretty good friends and, they've got a history together. And
certainly familiarity with representing their country, which is very important in Sweden.
Immediately comfortable with one another from that respect. And, would be very comfortable, I would think, with the way Dahlin leads. And not to say Dahlin's not intense, because he is, but I think there's a commonality in how people from Sweden lead. There's kind of a blueprint that they all seem to follow in terms of, or a lot of them anyways. But I don't know. I just think there's a chance Pettersson would be pretty comfortable here. And maybe that's, hey, maybe guys are too comfortable here, right? But I'm not writing him off as somebody that would be like all pissed off coming to Buffalo. I mean, he's from Sweden. He's not exactly, we talked about this after that press conference. It's like the weather and all this stuff, like that doesn't really matter when 80% of the league is, born and raised in places that they never saw the beach. So I don't know, that part of it to me, yeah, could he not live up to the 11.6 million? Sure, but the cap's going up. And if he's a 100-point player for you, then that changes your lineup. That changes what you could be as a team. And there's not too many chances you're going to get. And let's say Mitch Marner hits free agency or Rantanen hits free agency. That's when you start getting into the palm trees and taxes conversation, right? That's when, and not just the palm trees and taxes, but the 14-year playoff drought that they're going to be carrying into this offseason. And the ability to lure a player, like I've seen all the pictures of Mitch Marner in his Bills gear on the sidelines at Bills games. So maybe Terry could get Josh Allen to get on the phone and give his best recruiting pitch. But point being, there's a lot of variables out of your control when you're trying to get free agents. If you make a trade, it's a different bucket. And, that's, these opportunities don't come around super often in the NHL. So, I mean, I'm saying that, and a superstar player just got traded on Friday. So I guess they come around once in a while. But for Buffalo, they don't come around super, super often. And this is one that I think, depending on the package, right? You're not going to completely overpay. You're not desperate, right? They shouldn't act desperate anyways. It's not like they're trying to make a playoff push. So, you don't want to act out of major desperation, but you've got the pieces to put together some compelling offers, I think.
No, they certainly do. I think this fan base would love it. People just love trades in general. And to your point, I mean, it would be nice for this fan base to see the Sabres part of, you miss out on, like, they weren't ever in the round 10 running, but you saw like a Timo Meyer a couple of, years ago in a similar situation, end of the contract, going into his next contract, get moved. And it would be nice. This player's already locked up. The heavy lifting's already been done. The negotiation's already been done. Now he's got to go out and get them while you can. It would be nice for the fan base. I think that a hell of a player. Is he exactly what you need? Not exactly. I think they need still more ass kicker, high rev and engine type of players, but hell of a player. You go out and get him, responsible. You can use him in a lot of different situations with a lot of different players. And I don't think there's any connection to Patrick Berglund. That's the other, like, what's the downfall? He's another Patrick Berglund. I don't really worry about that. I think that they could clear those hurdles here in terms of acquiring a Swede who does not want to be in Buffalo. So I say that in jest. Okay. There's no reason. I think that maybe it's a rescue mission for him. And
Maybe.
the clean slate could be really good for this player, but we just spent a lot of time talking about it for the second time on this podcast. I don't know if people are sick about it, if they're into it, but there was a development on this and it was definitely worth getting into. Chat is moving. I got to get you out of here within a reasonable time frame tonight. Before we do look at the chat, Sabres, we're going to do a hard shift. We're going to go from a superstar to Nicholas Aube-Kubel. So Aube-Kubel clears waivers and seemingly is going to have some time down in Rochester, $1.5 million, excuse me, getting buried down in the AHL. So the Sabres are absolutely thrilled about that. But thoughts on just the move and what it means? I think we know what it means, but I kind of want to hear your spin on it.
Yeah, I think it's easy to pile on Kevin Adams for this. I think it's easy to pile on Kevin Adams for everything. It's the easy thing to do, but that injury at the beginning of the season just kind of derailed Aubé-Kubel. I mean, he came back earlier, sprained his knee, came back earlier than he should have, and his game is speed and physicality, and he didn't have the same jump that he had in training camp whenever he came back. So maybe this, gives him a chance to get going a bit. But I also feel it was important to kind of act on the obvious, that Lindy Ruff mentioned the way Kulik is playing was part of this as far as just roster space and everything. The way Kozak has played was also a factor because he's the one who came up when Kulik or when Aubé-Kubel cleared waivers. Greenway's getting a little bit closer to getting back, so there's that element of this too. But you need to reward the right guys because the rest of the room, you can't lie to the rest of the room, right? They're watching the games, they're playing the games, they know who's playing well, they know who's not, who's contributing. And so it's not a great look, obviously, to have 1.5 million in Rochester, and Sam Lafferty was out of the lineup tonight as well. So this big, bad fourth line that, as Dylan Cousins told me before the season, they were going to roll over teams. It's not even a line anymore. Two of them weren't in the lineup tonight. Malenstein is sort of the one guy I think that's held his weight, on that trio that was supposed to change the identity of the bottom six. And that element of it is disappointing. But the Aubé-Kubel in particular, the injury, I think just makes it, a different conversation for me because we never really got to see the full version of what he is.
I know when he came back from that knee issue that knocked him out early in the season, he was wearing a brace, right?
Yeah, he was playing with a brace. And so
was he still doing that recently when he was getting game action, or did he shed that?
I think
Kinda
it
like
was
Forrest
off.
Gump.
I'm not positive. Yeah. But clearly it was something that, it just never got. Between that and then what you got to do to compensate for it, it's just when a guy's game is speed the way his is, he had some okay moments, but only a goal and an assist, and just not enough consistency. Yeah. Some mistakes that I think got him on Lindy Ruff's bad side early. So it is what it is, but I mean, it was probably overdue, frankly, to waive him.
It's a good win for, it's a good win for Rochester. If he goes down, he should play. I think that, and look, he could help himself. If he does well down there, maybe he gets flipped at the deadline just for depth, experience, depth, get another 7th, 6th, whatever. Just get something possible, right? Or maybe they may need him. There's injuries in the NHL. Maybe he gets back, maybe he finds a step, bring him back up and whatever. But I think at this point, the writing's on the wall. If you're bringing someone up, depending on, if there's an injury at the top club roster right now and you don't sign Saad and guys or pick up Saad, claim Saad, for example, Isak Rosene's right there, and I think that he is worthy of a look. You don't keep him up too long, throw him a little reward, get him some NHL game checks, get him some NHL game speed. But he's a guy that, he's not going to spend a lot of time up here. You got to throw him back down because he's, leading goal scorer, kind of an important player for Rochester. And there should still be this ultimate objective for that team to go very deep in the playoffs. It's the same story of what you and I talked about in the past with Devin Levi. Call him up, give him a game or two, and then pop him back down. And that's the ultimate objective. They are Amherst by and large this season. Coming up on 49 minutes here on the Baker Fairburn Hockey Show. If you haven't liked this video, please do. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, all that fun stuff. Matthew, anything in the chat before I get you out of there? If you can tell, Matthew's not in his basement tonight. He is still at the arena, and I want to get him home within a reasonable time frame tonight. Seeing anything that tickles your fancy?
I think we hit on most of the questions. There was a few people asking about Marner. I mean, you'd love Marner, right? I mean, that'd be a great addition, but I don't know how realistic it is.
I think that Marner's going to go out of his way to make it work. If Toronto wants him, he wants Toronto.
I would agree. And I mean, if he hits the market, I guess, sure, we can have that conversation then. I don't know how realistic it is that he will hit the market. I don't see a ton of questions that we didn't address in some way, shape, or form. Just a lot of great conversation among the chat, as usual, that they're kind of bouncing back and forth. I don't know, that we're going to see this get to the finish line. We'll see. It's going to be interesting to follow, but a few comments in here that Kevin Adams, will be too scared to make a mistake, and that Kevin Adams isn't going to get this to the finish line, but that's part of
it's go time. 5 years.
It's go time, right? 5 years.
It's go time.
It's you don't want to hear about the almost deals anymore, or the thing that could have worked out, or if this didn't happen. At some point, you're 5 years in, you got to try to make whatever deals are available to you. So we'll see if anything materializes. It seems like every day something new comes out of Vancouver with their whole situation. So
we'll see how those advertisement to the rest of the NHL. If you go out and you make a move like that and you pick up Elias, that's a hell of an advertisement for the Sabres. It helps them do some of that. Just like what we were talking about, like with Zucker. Like, what are you waiting for to re-sign Zucker? It's a good no-brainer piece of business to get done, and it chips away at erasing some of the memories of that press conference.
Yeah,
that he had.
Exactly. I mean, the Bills season is over, and maybe Terry Pegula says, "All right, let's do something here." The answers clearly were not in the room, as they are still in last place despite this 7-2 win. So now's the time to find some of those answers. Now's the time to be thinking about 25-26 and how to make that a legitimately win now season. And the work should start now, at this deadline coming up. You got to start to lay the foundation for next season, and show, I think, the room too, right? That you're serious about making this, doing everything in your power to make this a winning team. I think that matters, not just to your point, to send a message to the rest of the league and an advertisement to players around the league, but to the guys in your own room. Some of these RFAs, some of these UFAs, Zucker, right? Hey, you want to stick around and play with this guy? Like, this is going to look different next year. That work has to begin as soon as possible, because it can begin, right? Teams are making deals, and, you can sit on your hands and react to everything that's happening, or you can be proactive and start making your team better now and not wait until June and July to, work on the fringes, attack the core of this roster, because it's obviously not worked out as constructed.
On that vein, give me your percentage probability that the Sabres put in a claim on Saad. YouTube chat. I want to see some percentages from the chat.
35.
35.
Is that high?
I think it's low.
You think it's low?
I think veteran. I mean, have you learned your lessons? This is a test to see if you've learned your lessons. I see 10. I see 0%, 10%, 30%, 15.
I was the
0,
highest so far.
30,
like.
5, 27 from Chris D'Amato the second. The chat's not feeling it.
I don't know if they're not feeling Saad, or if they're not feeling Kevin Adams actually doing it.
I think we know the answer to that. Neil Kennington says 80%. And Stephen Cantor says 100% going skiing tomorrow. Stephen, I was thinking about you the other day. I'm ready to gear up, man. I'm ready to gear up and do it. I will send him a message. Think about going down to Holiday and let's just do it. Let's just do it. At any rate, Saad for me is, I don't want to say no brainer. I do think the probability that they'll put a claim in is higher than 30, but probably not. It's 50-50. I honestly, I think that it's compelling enough to, I think, really make them think about it, have a meeting. Like they actually had to book a meeting in Teams and talk about it. I think they're actually having that. It's that level of compelling. They're actually talking about it in a formal Outlook book meeting.
I would think so. I mean, you got to be, if you're talking about the roster every day, this is a, if we are carving out time to talk about it, I certainly hope they are, formal meeting or not. I don't know who would be on the invite list, but
Coda says no to Saad. Could you imagine getting close to the cap and losing an RFA to an offer sheet? I don't know. The cap's going, what's the cap going up?
they don't know exactly. It's going up enough that I wouldn't be majorly concerned about that.
Yeah. Yeah. I get what Coda's saying. I don't know. I just don't think that puts you in danger. His real dollars are what, 3.6?
Yeah.
Most of the dollars have been paid already. Not that the real dollars come into the cap. I get that. Yeah, it's interesting. You know, I think Saad is one that you got to really, I don't know. You've talked me into him a little bit. I was always, you know, whatever. Maybe it's just those games. Like he just does well against the Sabres. He had a good game, really good game against the Sabres earlier. Christopher D'Amato II says, confidence in Kevin level. Waiting for the notification that we traded for Elias Pettersson, and it's the other guy with the same name. Hey, I don't mind him, by the way. I liked him in his draft year, man. Big physical guy.
I think the fact that they have both of them is really obnoxious. So much so that when my mailbag published this morning, there was a mix-up that a picture of the other Elias Pettersson got put on there. The fact that they're both on the same team is just annoying. I did not put the picture on there, but it's I think they need to trade one just for the sake of splitting those guys up.
Yeah, Kevin, get it done. I think that's my closing remarks. I'd really like to see it happen. Just makes too much sense to take the best run possible. You have the assets. I don't need to beat the dead horse there. It's time. It's time. Matthew Fairburn, in closing on your side, I'm going to pass the puck back to you. If you can do your plugs, anything that you want to share you're working on, or just where people can simply find you.
They can find me at The Athletic on the various social media platforms, whichever one. Just find my name, theathletic.com/Sabres. You can find everything I write there. Sometimes I write about the Bills, not often, but I did a couple times in the last week during their playoff run, chipping in, all hands on deck situation, but got our hands full on this front here for the next little while as we figure out how this team gets out of this mess in the next few months. So plenty more to come on that.
Quick plug for me. Prospect Avenue, 30-minute video yesterday, covered a lot of ground. If you're just curious about what's going on with some of the prospects, a lot of information there, put it together. Would appreciate if you guys checked it out. Leave your feedback, whatever. I left some meat on the bone, so I will follow up with another one pretty soon on that. Coming into, the playoff zone, NCAA hockey really heating up. Some good things happening there on the prospect front, so I'd encourage you all to check that out. Last thing I'll say, going back to your comment about finding you at The Athletic, Corey Proman put out his draft rankings today, and I'm not picking on Corey. I'm encouraging Corey to keep talking about Porter Martone being a below average skater, because a lot of people said the same shit about the Kachuk brothers, and maybe it caused them to fall a little bit. And maybe the Sabres aren't going to finish, 1, 2, or 3 in the draft order. We don't know, but please keep talking about his deficiency skating. If the other teams that are drafting ahead of the Sabres buy into that nonsense and it causes him to fall to the Sabres, I love it. Please do it. Okay.
Yeah, he's got him at number 5, I believe, on his list. So that's why I drew the line at top 5 protection, just in case he falls to 5. Be a good deal.
So I could go on all day about this. We have a lot of time. We have just under 5 months to talk about it, but putting too much emphasis on the World Juniors is a major mistake. Okay. And I know that's what's going to happen with a lot of these. And it's the same thing. It's the hype machine going on with Matthew Schaefer saying, oh, look, Canada tanked because he, got hurt. I don't know. I get the hype on Schaefer. Okay. But like, let's not overdo it a little bit. I saw like even in Bob McKenzie's poll of some scouts, they're all saying like he's like so far ahead or like it's won and it's not even close. How can you possibly say that right now? I think there's, it's easy to look at like the impact that Cale Makar has had on Colorado, and you see a defenseman that can change the game and say, wow. But you're totally discrediting like Hagens when you're doing that, who's a hell of a player. And I'm not sitting here saying, I'm saying that it's not done yet. It's not done yet. And we might not see Schaefer for the rest of the season. Some of these guys, a lot of, like we talk about meat on the bone, there's still a lot of hockey left to play. So it's going to go down. It's going to be a really fun draft year. I can't believe we're doing this shit again, by the way. I can't believe we're still talking about the Sabres getting the top 5. I can't believe it, but here we are, sucked right back into the vortex. 15 years in a row, whatever the hell it is.
I've never covered a top 5 pick, so this is all new to me.
Well, maybe they won't get it. Maybe they won't get it. Maybe this team will go out and make a deal for Pettersson, and they'll.
I don't even think the Bills ever had a top 5 pick when I was on the beat. Now that I think about it, so new experience if that happens, which I know a lot of other people won't be very excited. Not a new experience for my readers, so I know they're not too thrilled about it.
But anyways, boys, keep deflating those Porter Martone tires. Keep deflating those tires, please. Get some people to buy the Kool-Aid. All right, I'm done. You're done. Everyone, thank you for hopping in as always. Appreciate you guys coming into the chat, mixing it up with each other, just being here. It's a pleasure to see that chat moving out of the corner of my eye when Matthew and I are having this discussion. Show is for you. You guys are a big part of it. And we'll be back again pretty dang soon. So for Matthew Fairburn, for the production crew who's out there braving the wind, Matthew, I think there's going to be some wind waiting for you. I can hear some things whipping around. There might be some weather conditions that I can't see, but I can hear them. I'm Kris Baker. We will see you again next time.